Well, it's nice to be here, and I do want to take this time to thank the foundation, because this is not a meeting that I'm hearing something in the background. Am I okay here? Okay. So I do want to take this time just to thank the foundation. For those brothers who may not know, I work a lot with the ICFG, kind of the elder liaison for that. They've been very helpful in some of the events and helping to fund that. And we just recently, I think it was last weekend, had an event up in Windsor. It was 80 some young folks there doing a lot of good work. We had one in La Puente, and actually came to Richmond last year. So very much appreciate the foundation. And as Brother Thad mentioned, we had 12 of our young folks. We decided to go down to Paraguay a couple years ago, and it's kind of interesting to see the bulletin board over there, Paraguay. But when you're actually there, I think it really opens your eyes, and the foundation was very much a part of that, as well as other churches and so forth that help support us to go down there. So many stories, so many life-changing events. I do think that before even I get into the topic, when we think about the things we should be doing, these are the things that can be life-changing and have such a positive effect. There's so many stories in my mind right now of us going down there. One of the ones that was, and you talk about stress and conflict, right? So we're sitting here, I think we're in Panama, because our flight takes us halfway down there. And my granddaughter and my grandson, he was only like 6 months old. I thought, and my daughter, of course, went, and her husband, Matt and Beverly, and they had taken him, because they got early boarding, taken a younger fellow on the plane. And so they had pre-boarded, lots of people in the line and everything. And my granddaughter, his sister, older sister, she looks at me and she says, his name is Judah. I got Judah's passport. I said, what? You got Judah's passport? Where's Judah? He's on the plane. So how's this going to work? I don't know. So, instant panic. I'm up there. And I don't speak. Google Translate does not work in a panic situation. Grandpa, yeah, but on plane. And I had to send my other son-in-law to go get him and everything. But that was a memorable event, but not nearly as memorable as being able to see the mission work that's being done there and the impact on people's lives. Do we have the first video to play?
Just trust me, you're going to want to watch this till the end.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
So there's a story about a couple from Minnesota, and they were experiencing a very cold and dreary winter. And so they decided, well, why don't we come down to Florida to experience some good weather? And they said, well, why don't we see if we can stay at the hotel where we honeymooned 20 years earlier? So they made the arrangements. The only little hiccup was the fact that they couldn't get on the same flight. And so they agreed that the husband was going to travel down to Florida on Thursday, and then on the next day, on Friday, the wife would follow. And so the husband arrives safely. He goes to the hotel, he checks in, and he decides to send his wife an email letting her know that he arrived safely. Well, he inadvertently made a very small mistake. He left out a letter in her email address. So this email went to somebody else. Now, the recipient of the email was a woman in Houston, Texas, who earlier that morning had buried her husband.
What?
Her husband was a minister. And in the evening, she said, well, let me check my email because I'm expecting that some friends and family who were not able to attend the funeral might be sending me some words of condolence and encouragement. Well, needless to say, when she opened up the first email, she fainted. And her son ran into the room to discover she was okay. But he looked at the computer screen, and this is the email that he found. To my loving wife, I've arrived. I know you're surprised to hear from me. They have computers here now, and you are allowed to send emails to your loved ones. I've just arrived and been checked in. I see that everything has been prepared for your arrival tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing you then. Hope your journey is as uneventful as mine was. P.S. It sure is hot down here.
So I happened to see that, and when I think about conflict, and sometimes we, as Brother Thad starts to mention, we start to get pretty keyed up. You know, we want to really get keyed up. So showing a video like that, a couple of things, and I'm trying to do this for the first time here. Maybe I should back up just a tad to let you know why I'm here, which I'm not really sure why that is, but I did go through some training years ago on conflict resolution. Brother Thad went through the same training. I have been involved with a number of conflicts in churches and myself and so forth. In fact, I want to share a little personal experience on this. And so in the years past, and this training was 3 days long, and there was a book by Ken Sande, and a lot of the things you're going to see is from him, and he does a really good job. But he starts with defining conflict. And as I looked at this first one here, I see misunderstandings, poor communications, and I thought about this video, right? What was the problem here? And by the way, I want to interact a little bit, and maybe I'll look at scripture a little bit here. There was a little bit of conflict. Why? Yeah, the wrong person. Okay. Totally a different message, not knowing where it was going, and it was just completely misunderstood. Completely misunderstood. And I think that a lot of times communications, it makes a huge difference. We're not really communicating all that well. The second thing is differences in values, difference in goals, difference in priorities, interest, opinions. These all play into reasons for conflict. Competition over limited resources, typically money, sometimes time, could be various things. We think about our churches and so forth. Individuals, I'm going to share one thing from that book. Brother Thad and I were going to talk about case studies, but in the very beginning of the Ken Sande book, he talks about a situation where a family had an estate of their mother who passed away, and kind of conflict that created. And that's because there was money in an estate, and who's going to get what, and that kind of thing. And then this last one is something I think we want to note here is sinful attitudes and habits. And you know, the first three, I think, are things we really can work on and are doable by just thinking through our interactions. And I'm going to spend some time focusing a little bit on our interactions we have with each other. And these first three, I think, a little bit easier. When it gets to the fourth one, sinful attitudes and habits, that can be a little more challenging. And so, but we'll talk about that. And let me just stop here and say that the plan was Brother Thad was going to do the first part of this and I was going to follow up, but we switched and last minute here. But this will be in his, this is from his slide presentation, but I think it's a key verse. And I want to read this and I want to make sure we think about this. Is all conflict unnecessary? Should we never have conflict?
Some conflict can be constructive and lead to new ideas and so forth. So simply say, leave it at that.
Leave it at that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
So those strikers, disciples forced them to go different directions.
Yep. Think about that. You know, the missionary journeys of Paul and so forth, and Barnabas and John Mark, and all of those discussions. Okay. I look at this verse, from whence cometh war and fightings among you? Come they not even of your lust that war in your members? Ye lust and have not, ye kill and desire to have. Ye cannot obtain, ye fight in war, yet ye have not, because you ask not. This is a deep verse. We got a lot of things in this verse, but in general, what might be some of the sins you would put under this slide? Oops. One of them that sticks out to my mind, but there's a lot of them. Okay. Lustful desires. Okay. Where does a lot of those sins start from? Pride. Very good. Very good. Pride. Someone has said, and I mentioned this one time in a Bible class, pride is one of those things, it's like bad breath. Everybody knows you have it, but you, right? And if you go back to a lot of our emotions, and we're going to talk about that, but if you go back to the origin of sin, where did it start? In the Bible. The father of Satan, right? And what did he say? That God really said, he started to challenge God, and then what he also said is, I what? I will be like the Most High, right? That's what he said. Okay, so there's this pride factor into it. It's really important to think about this, because no matter what our interactions are, we have these different reasons for conflict. We really need to look at the heart and say, is it me? Is it me here that is just has a proud heart here? We're going to talk a little bit about that in particular. Whoops, I'm going through that one and not this one. Okay, so I actually have a couple different versions. Hope you're not offended at that, but this is a particular verse. There's a book that I updated myself on. It's called Making Peace, a guide to overcoming church conflicts. So some of the things I want to talk about are church conflicts that we have here. So a lot of the material, a couple of the sentences that I quote are from this book. And the reason I point that out is, and I'm not necessarily trying to promote a lot of extra material, but this particular group, peacemaker.net, they hear from all over the country, all kinds of denominations. And I was a little bit taken back at some of their conclusions, which I think everyone in this room would probably agree to. And one of the things that he does is he looks at this particular verse. The King James, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into divers temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. ESV, a little different trials of various kinds, pretty much, and it produces steadfastness. So what can we say about the conflicts as trials in our life? Brother Dave kind of touched on it. But what is it doing? According to this verse. Okay. Okay. So is this something we want to escape out of? No. I mean, this one particular version, I'm not real big on all the versions, but this one presentator I watched says that consider it a gift. You ever thought about that? Consider this conflict, this trial, as a gift. Because it's going to build your character, it's going to build relationship, it has an opportunity to be strengthened through all of that, okay? And so scripturally, I think that we like to just avoid all conflict. And I want to compare it to, again, I'm taking some of this material from peacemaker.net, but he uses the word tension. Keep hitting the wrong slide thing. What is tension? Tension is this, as he's defined it, the state of being stretched or strained. The state of being stretched or strained. And, you know, the world is a tense place. Can you think of things that have tension that are important, that it's happening or working that way?
Tension in violin, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful music, but there has to be tension. Without the tension,
There's no music without the tension. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. Okay. They don't hang. That's right. Yeah, you find out what that's like in space, right? You know, it's like, I won't get into what they had trouble with up there, but yeah, you're dependent on gravity. Anybody work on cars here? Cars? Anybody ever replace a tensioner? Okay, we got a volunteer on what's a tensioner do? Exactly. I have a son-in-law who just thinks he can fix everything, and I love him dearly, but it's usually my garage, and if there's mistakes, I usually pay for it. But that's okay. We learn, but we replaced the tensioner and the timing belt tensioner and all this stuff. And I kept thinking of that. It's just, you know, it's so certain amount of tension. That's what it was designed to do. Okay. Well, the world is a tense place. What are some examples? Things in the world that are tense. Shouldn't be hard. Wars. How about even more personal? Family, employment, maybe. Ever had a little tension at work? Okay, I mean, these are all, so the world is a tense place. And tension is big. Who has Proverbs 27:17? Would someone read that? Okay. Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpeth another. Okay. So tension is biblical. We've talked about the Bible is full of tension, is it not? Okay. So I see these two pieces of metal, you know, hitting against each other, sharpening, and that can be a healthy thing if it's done the right way, right? Where is it unhealthy? When you start to point it to the other brother, right? Maybe you cut them. Okay, that's unhealthy. So I want to talk about that a little bit too, but it can be positive. We kind of mentioned some examples already, but they give the rubber band principle, right? There's 3 states of the rubber band, right? There's the static state that basically does nothing. At rest. Is it useful? Not really. There's the other state where I can really light this thing back and he's not even looking. That's a misuse of it, right? But there's other parts where you can, it's like a tensioner belt. It's made to hold things together, right? You know, we've been in some elder meetings before, and I don't want to, you know, divulge too much there. But one brother in particular said something that says, I'm stretched a little bit in this area. And I thought to myself, you know, that might be a good thing. Maybe we need to be stretched a little bit more. So it can be a positive thing when we think about positive uses. So there's good tension and there's bad tension. What's some examples? Does anybody know? I had some material here. Obviously, when I point this at Rod over here, that's not real good tension, right? Okay, so one of the things we have to do is we have to categorize what's good and what's bad, and think about that. And there are ways to do that, and we should do that. Can anybody kind of? There's one diagram. We're going to get toward the end, but it's a circle, and there's arrows pointing in. And then there's arrows pointing out. That's not the one, but there is another brochure. I don't have it in front of me right now. But anyways, the idea is that when tension is bringing us together, it's a good thing, right? But when it points out, when it's tearing us apart, that's a bad thing. And there are ways to know when we have that tension to be able to categorize it. Okay. For example, we talk about sharing, holding resources, good or bad works, and so forth. Start to identify what's good, what's bad, what we can share, what we don't share, and try to understand. How many have ever, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. What's good and bad? Is that? No, a good point. A good point. And there are ways to identify that. We're going to talk a little bit about that, especially when we have these interactions with each other. Okay, how many have ever heard the elephant in the room? What's it mean? Okay, big and obvious. How many noticed that there's an elephant in the room here? Oh, very good. And my little elephant over here, right? Yeah, see, elephant in the room. All right. Okay. All right. I can keep him around. So, okay, it basically, as Brother Sean said, it's originated from Ivan Krylov and a fable. And they talk about going into a museum, and he comes back out of the museum and he talks about everything, insects and little birds and creatures and everything. And what about the elephant in the room? He didn't even mention that. Okay. So I keep going. So obviously, elephant in the room is ignoring an obvious problem. So when we're talking about church and we're talking about conflict, what's the elephant in the room? What's the elephant in the room? Okay, well, that we define, what is that? Depends on the conflict. Okay, when we're talking about church and we're talking about differences and we're talking about conflict, what do you think you can say it.
What is
doctrinal problem, and if it is, then that's a big concern to us as believers. Because
Yeah.
sound doctrine, we have a sound church, and but sometimes there's disagreements over what is doctrine and what is permissible within the scope of scriptures.
Okay. Yeah, like Brother Rod is always kind of detailed on that, and that I appreciate that. That's very open. And the fact is, I just, okay, for the recording. Do you want to come up and use this, or does this work or not? Here, you can.
Don't do that. I won't be able to get it back. So, I mean, I said that a lot of times in church, of course, we have discussions about doctrine. And that is because as believers, we want to have sound doctrine. We want to apply the scriptures to our lives. We want to live Christ-like, and we want to be in a congregation, a group of believers that support sound doctrine. But sometimes there's disagreements over what is permissible doctrine or what can we do. You know, is this doctrine, or is this something in scriptures that we have some leeway on? We can do it different ways. And so I think that that's the essence of most of the challenges that I can think of in the church.
Okay, very good. So I put something in my AI generator, Gemini or something, and I asked about our church and said what kind of divisions have we had, and this is what I came up with. And these are the ones historically over time. It starts, you know, the ACCA, the ACCN, us. We have the Apostolic Christian Church, and this is the time frames and the reason, and of course recent divisions here. There was a German split, and then there was ACF, which is some know as the Preservationist of the Faith Church, and we don't even have the conferences thing in there, and it's just like, okay, all right, so we kind of have this historical thing. And by the way, is that just Apostolic Christian churches? No. We have a couple coming to our church right now that from Mennonite. They were going to the Mennonite church for 7 years. And he said, Gib, one day we went up there on a Sunday and half the church was gone. It had some kind of split, and half of them left. Okay. So, there can be some problems, and I think that we, times I don't know if I'm going to have time for all that. I always think I'm not going to have enough material, then I can see where I'm going to probably go over. Years ago, how many here know Brother Paul Weingartner? Remember Brother Paul? Okay. You know, he was a loving brother, very to the point, somewhat comical at times. So we're at Eastern Camp, right? And it's Friday, and I'm coming at a Friday. I see him walking, I think it was in the gym, and he walks toward me. Hello, Brother Gibb, you know, as he does, you know. And I said, oh, it's been a nice week. It's been a great week. And he says, yeah, 1 week's about right. 2 weeks we'd have a fight, 3 weeks we'd have a split. You know, and I thought to myself, okay, you know, I won't go into the rest of the discussion, but the question this book brings out is this: why do it starts asking the question, are we losing focus as a church? Why do we come to church? If you ask that question of your membership, why are your folks coming to church? What are they going to say? Wonderful, wonderful. I like that. Okay, what else? You have to. Okay. From that good German, I know mom there, you know. Kids programs, okay. Fellowship, wonderful. Encouragement, okay, wonderful. Edification. It's scriptural. All right. Be fed spiritually. Okay, a lot of good reasons there. Let me ask you this: why do you go to certain stores to shop? What's that? Price. Get a good price, okay. Quality, okay. They have what you need. They have what you need. So, I mean, I don't want to disagree with everything that was just said. I love to come to fellowship and kids programs and everything. But what have we turned our church possibly into to some degree? What's that? Well, okay, some degrees. Close, yeah. Certainly some could say that. Okay, it can be entertainment. That's all part of the reasons, but it's all on what I want. Consumer-based church going, consumer-based church going. Is that what the church was really made for? Say that one more time. Okay. 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 Now you're hitting in there of service. Does coming to church become about my personal needs and interest? That's what a lot of churches are sharing nowadays, and I think, yeah. Okay. I like that. That's a good point. That's a good distinguishing. Okay. I think the basic idea is that if we focus on God and his priorities, then we become less focused on us and our priorities. Is that fair to say, something to that effect? Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. So problems, I want to come back to that a little bit, but problems caused by conflict in the church. Forget actually what I have on this. But what are some problems? Okay, let me just give you these verses. Matthew 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. John 13:34-35. A new commandment I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another. Well, what's the problem with conflict? When we display it to the point of separation? What's the problem? Lack of love? Certainly that's the case. Love, because that's a key verse here, but what else? It ruins our witness. For those who don't know, I was not born and raised as an apostolic Christian. I came from an Episcopal background. So all the divisions you have, it's not my problem. No, I'm just, can I share something personal with you? And you don't mind if I embarrass you, Jimmy? So one of the things we did I learned in Mansfield. I grew up in Mansfield, and we have communion. Come in union, right? And what's it like as an outsider, okay, coming in, I still remember the first communion, and there was hundreds of members, and they line up, starting up here, and then the sisters on that side and the brothers on that side, and they all greet each other one by one by one. And now you're looking at somebody here that didn't have anything like this, okay? And I could tell you a lot about my background, and it's not that important, other than that I gave up a lot of what I knew to come here. And I still remember, the way they did that. And, it was kind of strange, frankly, especially when the brothers with the mustaches and everything want to greet you and the kiss. And, I wasn't used to that, but it was so important to that. And so when we went to Richmond, I suggested we do something similar. Right, Jimmy? And so we do the same thing in Richmond. I like it because we are a smaller group, and everybody kisses everybody. So I mean, just so you know, but that's the kind of, you know, closeness we have. And I remember one time as I went through the line, Brother Jimmy came up to me, says, "You know what I like about you, Gilbert?" I says, "No, I'm not sure. You ain't got a drop of Eastern European blood in you." You remember that? Right. So, you know, so it's like, okay, I take that as, but you know, okay, a lot of division and conflict in our churches because we aren't really appreciating each other. We're not taking the time to live out the scripture. And sometimes we have these practices that really help do that. And that's one thing that I learned. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called. So that's just a highlighting of those verses. The Matthew 18 principle. Everybody know the Matthew 18 principle, right? Okay, what is it? Quick. You offend your brother, what do? Okay, you go to him, that's the scripture, and tell him his fault between thee and thee alone. Is this working? It's rarely done. I mean, it works, it's scriptural, right? What's this? What's the, often when we share this, what are the next steps? 2 or 3 witnesses. Ultimately, the church. What is the problems in those 2 and 3 steps? I'm not saying that the scripture's not right here, but what gets to be the issue when you start to go to steps 2 and 3? Okay, sometimes that happens. We get them out of sequence. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Sincerely have the gaining of a brother in our heart and mind from the beginning, we're already on the wrong foot.
We're already on
The sins that were asked about in the beginning of this presentation,
yeah.
they're already present, and they're already there to really intervene with what God wants to accomplish.
Okay. Excellent thoughts. And just to continue that though, once we start bringing others into the process, what happens? Does that become easier or harder? Harder. One of the things I think we don't do enough of is to say, this is step 1, and you put all your effort into this step right here. Because everything else is necessary at some point in time. But this is where you're going to have 80% of your success in step 1. And so we need to be more aware, I think, of that. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's another whole subject, but you're right. You're right. There's a lot in my mind I want to say to that, but I have only so much time to go. But we have to be careful about why we consider, as Brother Mark pointed out, when we go to each other, there may be already sin on the table, and how we approach each other. And even that can be a problem. In Peacemaker, and it just comes to me now, and did you pass out the little books on that? Okay, yeah, so you have these things, and it's somewhere on this pamphlet, and Thad, you can help me out, it talks about overlooking trespasses, right? What section is that? He may talk about that, but overlooking trespasses, it's at some point. Do you have that? Yeah, right. Yeah. 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 Overlooking offenses. Really, this pamphlet, and Brother Thad will probably talk about it more this afternoon, but this is not a promotional. This is a tool, okay? This is a tool. I've sat down with families who are having conflict with this pamphlet in hand, okay? And hopefully he'll talk more about that. But this idea that we can overlook things, ooh, I just can't overlook that. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We allow some variation there. We're forgiving and everything. But elsewhere we go, we switch to some another part of our life. We don't tolerate a thing.
Yeah.
There we're very rigid. Allow love to permeate every part of us outward toward everybody and everything.
Yeah. And knowing what the intent of another person is too. I mean, I have to be real. I am not the most patient person. Every time I study this material, it's like, Lord, are you trying to remind me? Because I am not the peacemaker that I think I should be. In fact, as I go through this material, I think about even my relationship with my wife sometimes, especially when I was younger, she's always kind of in the way, or she's doing this and that kind of irritates me or that. And you know why she's doing a lot of that? She's doing it for me. She's trying to make things better for me. It's like, whoa, okay. The church, and this is a quote from the book, the church must announce a gospel that addresses and reconciles the power of sin, sufficient not only to forgive our sin, but to transform our character. Who knows Romans 12:1? What is that? But transformed in the renewing of your mind. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But that's what the purpose of the church really needs to be focused on. We must become reconciled. This is a quote from the book. Constant pursuit of holiness, a way of thinking, acting, being that forms us in the church as it changes our collective character, habits, and practices. This is written by a man who talks about churches across the country in all denominations. Is your church a church that people can reconcile together? Is your church a place where the hurting can come and find someone who will pray with them for a struggle that they are having, or an issue that they can't deal with, or a sickness that, and wow, time is running out, but I've had some just dramatic things happen in the last few weeks of visiting those who are very, very sick. In fact, just last evening. It's really gut-wrenching when you come up to a brother and he says, you know what I'm planning? I said, no. Well, what are you planning? He goes, my funeral. And you just swallow hard. I talked to a brother just last week, and he's got a hole in his throat. And I see how the church has come around him to support him. See, my wife and I went to a place we like to eat. Sat down, I looked, and they have this sign on the wall that says, "We're here to serve you." We're here to serve you. Yes, the fellowship's nice. Yes, the kids' programs are nice. Yes, the meals may be nice. The fellowship is sweet. Those are all important things. But are we here to serve each other? If we were, I submit to you that we would not have a whole list of all these divisions, because we'd be focused on the gospel. Not that these other things aren't important. We know, but we can work through those. Okay. Reconciliation, and this is the way it's defined in the book, is the broken of broken relationships changing a state of enmity, division, and estrangement between God and humanity, peace, fellowship, and harmony. Had a message last week, and probably in Worcester tomorrow, it's going to be on Ephesians 2. You want a good idea of how the church should work? Ephesians. Just read Ephesians. And look at why you should be able to forgive and reconcile. Because God did what for you? He died on the cross, 100% not guilty, but he took it all. Now, translate that to you as a church member. How important is your goals and your ambitions and your desires? Okay, so I'm going to try to finish up with this. Everybody knows what acrostic is. This is just a example. I like this one. Faith. It's each letter spells a word. Forwarding all issues to heaven. Just so you know what that is. I thought that was a good one to remember. So Ken Sandy goes through, and I have the link down here. I didn't want to copyright everything, but he goes through this SOG plan, the acrostic SOG. And he has this picture. He talks about his daughter. And what we're getting into now is those first moments of tension. So how do we take tension and not get it into conflict? Okay. And there are ways that it's really important for us to understand how we physiologically work and our natural tendencies and when to start noticing things. And he starts with being self-aware. Why are you feeling this way? You've been in those discussions. I've heard some of the things. And all of a sudden, you start to something builds up in you, right? Why are you feeling this way? The second one is, why is the other person doing what they're doing? Like this little girl right here, can you kind of tell? I mean, where she's at right now? How many brothers or situations you've been in where you start seeing funny faces like that, okay? Well, why? What have I triggered here? What have I done? Okay? And then God aware. Where is God in this? Back to that verse in James about how is God going to be glorified in all of this? Okay? And what are our values here? And that's, what things are really important as we have these kind of situations that develop. I asked AI Copilot to generate a slide for me, and it came up with this. And I thought it was pretty good, actually. Self-aware in our own minds, other-aware as we talk to others, God-aware as what he has for us, and then values. What do we hold important here? And I could list a whole slew of things. I don't think I have to. That we think that one value is over another. It can go to music and clothing and a whole bunch of things that we tend to lock horns with. It's like, okay, where's the value here? Okay, so what he does is he says it's all a lot of based on emotions. Okay, emotions he compares to a sailboat, and he compares it to the wind. So the wind is our emotions and the sailor of the sailboat. Okay, so you can see the differences. What does a good sailor do with the wind? Harnesses it. Anything else? What's that harnessing do? It keeps you going, right? Points you in the right direction. And then you have the sailor who's just not ready for this gust of wind and has everything wrong. And we see the result on that, okay? So here's another acrostic, okay? Read your emotions. Recognize your emotions, okay? There are all kinds of emotions. What are some emotions that you can think of naming some emotions? Quick, emotions. Fear. What else? Doubt. Other emotions. Anger, Disappointment, yeah, all of these are good. We're going to talk about some of these, okay? So know what you're feeling, okay? Recognize it as this is going on here, okay? Evaluate what's going on. Okay, what do we mean by that? How's it making me feel? Why am I feeling this way? Maybe, this is something that's really important to me, or maybe this is a little bit of pride. I'm feeling that I'm being challenged here and I'm not being respected, or maybe I'm just lazy. Maybe I don't feel like, I don't really have the time for this right now. Okay. All right. So what's going on here? What's going on? Learn how to read this. And anticipate what's likely to happen. How many have ever gone into a job review and maybe it hasn't been the best? I've had that happen. What's your initial reaction? Initial reaction. You go in a job review, 4 out of 5, you're below average. What's that? Discouragement, okay. How might you react? What are you talking about? I was the top guy. I did this, I did that. You're just a boss that sits around and just watches your TV screen, something, there's that initial reaction. And what could happen? You get fired. Okay, that's an extreme case, but when we think about dealing with each other, our reactions can send us the wrong direction, like the sailboat, okay? Think about where this is going to go. Direct, and so find constructive ways to direct it the right way. So we'll talk about that kind of. So back to labeling some emotions, and I just want to point these out. Some of them were brought up, are very good, but I want you to notice the differences between these emotions. Okay, it's important to distinguish emotions, kind of like pneumonia and a common cold. Everybody understand pneumonia is a little more dangerous than a common cold, is it not, right? Okay, so bitterness, how's that more dangerous than disappointment? It doesn't go away. I've seen, individuals who just hold on to their bitterness. There's a lot of scriptural verses about that too, by the way, but self-pity can lead to more problems than sadness. What's the problem there? How does that happen? Self-pity, I'm sorry? Wallowing. Okay, yeah. Why does this happen to me? I'm never gonna. Okay, fear obviously can be more crippling. Fear can paralyze us. All these fears that we have. What does the Bible say about fear? Perfect love casts out fear, right? These are verses. I don't know, we believe these or what? It's like the Bible's got the answers on a lot of this. So it's important to practice looking into our own hearts, accurately applying the labels: sad, discouraged, depressed, angry, lonely, embarrassed, rejected, bitter, jealous, self-pity, just to name a few. Okay, now, this is really complicated and it's not really that hard, but this is something I think we need to understand. And I don't know, in Richmond, we had a series on this, on how our brains are wired. And there's the limbic systems. Everybody know what the limbic system, that's a little in the middle down at the bottom. And it basically is the part of the brain that just initially reacts, stores things. And how many have ever walked through like a forest and you jump back, you thought it was a snake and you looked down, it was a stick? Anybody have that or something like that? Okay, that's the limbic system that you're initially reacting to it. And then there's this thing called the amygdala, which is part of the limbic system that's kind of like the first alert. Okay, you got a problem, you got a problem. And then you have these little lightning bolts, and I don't have a pointer up or anything, but you see these little lightning bolts at the top of the brain. It's the cortex and the neocortex, and that's the reasoning part of your brain. And now for teenagers, that part isn't fully developed yet. Just an FYI. Okay, so I mean, if you go to, anybody tried a teenager rent a car? You know, they won't rent you a car. And so I mean, this has been studied. There's a delay between the limbic, the initial reaction part of your brain, to the reasoning part of your brain, the cortex and the neocortex, okay? There's a delay there. That's what the flow chart on the right says. I don't know. Can be anywhere to 6 to 10 seconds, okay? So amygdala hijack. I don't know. So the next step to ask yourself is, why am I feeling this way? And these kind of questions help you to give that brain time to start reasoning this. You don't get into this immediate response. I'm feeling angry. Why? Perhaps questioning my judgment. Why else? I'm busy, lazy. What am I feeling? Self-pity. Why? Okay, start thinking about things. And I like the scriptural verses here because I think, again, the Bible gives us these answers. We just don't maybe comprehend them. Matthew 5:15, 18, but those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart and they defile the man. So we need to be careful with our words, right? James 1:9, wherefore, my beloved, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak. Okay, all right. You think the Bible knows what's going on here? It knows we're wired that way. When it talks about Romans 12:1 and it talks about the regeneration, the renewing of our mind, it's because our mind can be programmed. Okay, anticipate. There was a video, I don't know if they're going to be able to play it, about amygdala hijack. It was the YouTube one, and if they can figure that out, we'll show it. What are the consequences? Again, we're making the conscious effort to move our brain activity from the emotional zone to the reasoning zone. Draw on moments, experiences, learn by asking, what's likely to happen if I give in to these emotions, okay? If I give in to my anger, I'll become defensive and say harsh things. If I give in to self-pity, I withdraw, and that's just a way to punish and manipulate them for not relating the way I want. My selfish desires, that's what I want. Okay. A lot to say, but time's running out here. How much time do I got? I'm out of time, right? But maybe 10 minutes, okay. All right, so will I offend my God who sent his son to free me from these sins? Okay. So how do we redirect this? Okay. In the middle of that, you see that reaction's happening. You've had time to think this through a little bit, and you see where it's going. I'm sorry for being short with you. I really am sorry. How many times, do we take it? What happens when we have a response like that? Diffuses it, usually right away. It's amazing. Now, I'm sorry. That was my pride. I'm at fault here. Okay. I know you're really busy right now. We're all busy, right? I don't have time for this, but if you could spare a few minutes, I'd really like to talk through this. So practical ways to read yourself. We can able to play any of these videos or not? Okay, I want you to look. This one we're going to play. This is a case of amygdala hijacking, limbic hijacking here. I think they're going to play it after we get an apple. Okay, listen, watch this. Tell me what emotion is taking over here.
There's more? Colonel Moore's wife? Yes. I need help finding an address. I'm looking for...
Jackass! Do you know what this is? Do you know what you just did to me?
I don't like this job, ma'am. Just trying to do it.
Wait. Wait. I'll take it to her. And tell the cab company if there are any others, just bring them to me.
Okay. So what was the hijack there? This was happening. Thought her husband was dead. Okay. Just lashed out, right? Just lashed out. And then what happened? Yeah, she wasn't thought. So what did she do? What happened in the brain we just talked about? She went to the reasoning part of the brain, right? Okay, this is how I acted in an outlandish. This man is just trying to do his job. He was just trying to help, and I just burst out at. I just lashed out, and I need to help him. I need to help him. Can we play this video? Time is, I know, up, but
Jake,
okay.
how you doing?
Listen to this. I want you to look at the emotions here.
What?
This is about a boxer. True story.
Young lady, your brother's in enough trouble without you telling him.
You might not be able to hear. His brother stole this big piece of salami.
From the butcher's. And he won't say a word about it, will you, Jay? Will you, Jay?
Okay, pick it up. Let's go. Do not test me, boy. Right now.
So I want you to watch the emotions.
Howard, stay here.
I think Russell Crowe is the actor here. He's going back to the store to take it back. He walks out with his son and has this discussion. I want you to watch his emotions and how he deals with this.
Marty Johnson had to go away to Delaware to live with his uncle.
Why?
His parents didn't have enough money for them to eat.
Yeah, well, things ain't easy at the moment, Jay. You're right. There's a lot of people worse off than what we are. Just because things ain't easy, that don't give you the excuse to take what's not yours, does it? That's stealing, right? We don't steal. No matter what happens, we don't steal. Not ever. You got me? Are you giving me your word?
Yes,
Go on.
I promise.
And I promise you, we will never send you away. It's okay, kid. You got a little scared, I understand.
Okay, in the closing minutes, I just want to look at this. I'm not sure you heard the situation and everything, but the little boy, he has this conversation with his father, and he opens up. Now, when the father comes home and sees that he stole this thing, what would be the normal reaction? This is a boxer, by the way. It's a great story during the Depression. What might be his reaction? Anger. Why'd you do this? You know better. He doesn't respond. And how does that change the conversation? How does that change it on a conversation with the little boy? What does the little boy say? Did you hear that? What did he say? hey, did you know my friend so-and-so got sent away to live with Uncle so-and-so? He turns around and he says, why? Because his family doesn't have enough food to eat and they had to send him away. So what has he done there? What was his motive? What is he sharing? Oh, fear. He's going to get sent away. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, fear of separation. Fear of separation. Notice the pronouns. How does Russell Crowe deal with the emotions there? Did you read the face there? What is he struggling with? What is he struggling with? This is the depression. Whose fault is this? Is it his? No. No, he's living in the result of what government has put him into, depression. He struggles with that. I don't want to be in this situation. Maybe there's a little bit of tension we talked about. Okay, but then something happens and his pronouns change. Did you catch that? How did the pronouns change? It goes from I and you to what? We. We will never send you away. I'm sorry that we've run so much over the time here, but knowing how we physically are wired at times, knowing the scripture and how it directs us at times, knowing the tension that we have at times, it needs to be redirected. That's the message, because I've seen what the results can be. So Lord, be thankful for being able to present this.